The road is flat enough out there that it feels like the whole world has been planed smooth. Just wind, winter sky, and the long gray ribbon of Route 66 running east out of Amarillo. It's December 6th, 1934. The light has that hard, pale look you only get in cold air. And somewhere on that highway, there's a car that doesn't belong to the man driving it. A stolen Ford, rolling a little too fast, a little too steady, like the driver has decided that normal is his best disguise. Lawmen have been chasing Normal for years. They've heard his name in courthouse hallways, in the breathless rush of newspaper copy, in the clipped, tired talk that happens late at night in sheriff's offices. They've said it like a curse and sometimes like a joke that isn't funny. Irvin Thompson. Blackie. He is the kind of outlaw whose story doesn't end with one robbery, one gunfight, one lucky escape. His story is an arc: arrest, conviction, prison, escape, capture again, escape again, until the paper trail becomes a shadow that follows him everywhere. And on this day, on this road, that shadow has finally caught up to the body. A deputy closes in. A shot hits a tire, rubber flaps, the car wobbles, the chase collapses into what chases always become in the end. A few seconds of fear and decision, too fast for anyone to think clearly, just fast enough for everyone to remember forever. The deputy fires through the windshield. The outlaw's head snaps back. The stolen car coasts into the winter air like it's suddenly run out of purpose. That's the ending people picture. The outlaw, the highway, the last burst of gunfire, the dust settling. But it doesn't start there. It starts earlier, farther north, in a decade when outlaw didn't mean horses and six-shooters anymore. It meant cars, fast ones, and county lines, and the hard reality that if you could keep moving, you could stay alive. Oklahoma in the early 1920s had that problem in its bones. Criminals could cross a line on a map, and suddenly the men chasing them had to stop, telephone ahead, beg for help, arrive late. The old way wasn't built for speed, and speed is the real theme of Blackie Thompson's life. Not just the speed of engines, but the speed of decisions. How fast you choose to go through a door with a gun, how fast you decide to shoot, how fast you decide to run again. To understand why men like him were so hard to catch, you have to feel what money meant back then. A year's wages for a working man could be the kind of number you could count on your fingers and still feel proud of. Money that arrived slowly, week by week, under sun and wind. A car cost enough to be a dream, not an afterthought. And a bank, especially in a small town, wasn't just a building. It was the place where people tried to keep the results of their labor safe from weather, fire, and bad luck. So when a bank robbery happened, it wasn't just theft, it was a rupture. It was the moment a whole town realized, all at once, that the rules only work if everyone agrees to follow them. Blackie understood that. He made a career out of it. In 1923 in Grady County, he walked into a bank that ran on routine. You can picture the place, a counter worn smooth by years of elbows, paper ledgers that smelled like ink, the quiet ticking of a clock that no one ever noticed until the room turned tense. When Blackie came in, it didn't feel like a movie. It felt like ordinary life being forced to hold its breath. Witnesses later said the strange part wasn't the gun. It was how calm he was. He didn't shout. He didn't pace. He spoke like a man asking for something he was already owed. That calm did what shouting never could. It made everyone else hesitate. It made them choose survival over heroics. In minutes, money that had taken months and years to accumulate was concentrated into a bag, carried out the door, and turned into distance. Because that's what money really was for Blackie. Not comfort, distance. A few $1,000s then wasn't just cash. It was escape fuel. It was the ability to keep moving, to keep swapping cars, to keep paying for meals with bills that didn't ask questions. It was the difference between hiding in a ditch and hiding in plain sight. The robbery made him visible. It put his name into conversations where it hadn't been before. But it didn't make him infamous. Not yet. Infamy arrived in 1924 in Drumright. Drumright was the kind of oil town that felt like it was vibrating. Men came in from everywhere chasing a payday. Nights ran loud and late. Tempers were short. law enforcement was stretched thin and always on edge, because in a boomtown, trouble doesn't arrive politely. On July 2nd, 1924, Blackie's path intersected with a police officer named Ulysses Sterling Lennox. However it began, a suspicion, a chase, a botched stop, it ended in gunfire. Lennox was killed. Other officers were injured, and with that, Blackie crossed the line that turned him from wanted to hunted. Bank robbers can sometimes bargain, sometimes hide, sometimes slip away into a new life. A man who kills a lawman rarely gets that luxury. After Drumright, the chase became personal. Every deputy who heard his name understood what it meant. This wasn't just about money. This was about authority, about fear, about whether the state could protect its own. Blackie ran because running was the only option that still existed, and the road took him in. Cars in those days were temperamental, engines overheated, tires shredded on gravel. Gas stations weren't everywhere. But the advantage wasn't reliability, it was unpredictability. A man in a car could cross counties faster than word could travel, especially in a place where a telephone call might take longer than the drive itself. Blackie learned the geography like a second language. He learned which towns had vigilant sheriffs and which towns had lazy ones. Which roads were watched, which roads were forgotten. He learned how to move without drawing attention until he needed to. And then he moved like a man who didn't believe the world could stop him. That belief showed itself in one crime that sounded like myth even at the time: the safe truck job. It wasn't enough to rob a bank and vanish. On December 19, 1924, Blackie's gang robbed a bank by loading the entire safe into a truck and driving away with it. If you've never stood next to an old bank safe, understand the audacity. Those safes weren't meant to be opened easily, and they certainly weren't meant to be moved. They were iron monuments. They were the bank's heart. They sat there to reassure people, you can trust this place because this thing is too heavy to steal. Blackie's answer was simple. Heavy doesn't mean impossible. To steal a safe like that, you need time, muscle, tools, and nerve. But what you really need is something rarer. You need to understand that most people freeze when reality does something it's not supposed to do. They hesitate. They look around for confirmation. They wait for someone else to act. Blackie lived inside that hesitation. He robbed the gap between disbelief and response. But no matter how clever you are, attention accumulates. Eventually it becomes weight you can't carry. On Christmas Day, December 25th, 1924, they caught him. You can feel the contrast. Families trying to make the day gentle, and somewhere the law closing its fist around a man who'd turned so many days into emergencies. He was tried, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison. That should have been the end. For a while it was. Blackie went into the Oklahoma State Penitentiary at McAllister, a place built for containment, a stone and steel machine designed to erase motion. And prisons do something to most men. They grind them down into routine. But routine was what Blackie studied best. He watched how guards moved, which doors opened when, which men got sloppy, which tools went missing without anyone noticing, which habits were assumed to be secure simply because they'd worked yesterday. He learned the prison the way he'd learned towns, as a system with seams. And in 1924, long before the escape that would later make headlines, something else happened. Something that shows you how complicated that era was. Authorities, digging through the nightmare of the Osage murders, briefly used Blackie as an informant, cut him loose under supervision, hoping he could provide underworld information. The logic was desperate. Sometimes you try to catch wolves by borrowing a wolf. But wolves don't stay borrowed, they run. Blackie ran then, and he kept running later because that's what he did. Years passed. The country changed. The Great Depression hollowed out towns, closed banks, broke families. It also created a new kind of outlaw landscape. Desperation everywhere, law enforcement under pressure, and criminals who could move quickly becoming harder to pin down. Then came the first major rupture. On August 31st, 1933, Blackie escaped from the Oklahoma State Penitentiary. If you want to feel what that meant, imagine being a warden reading that report. Imagine being a sheriff hearing it over the phone. The words aren't just information, they're a threat. Because an escape doesn't mean a man is free. It means he is loose. It means the chase is back on, and this time everyone knows what he's capable of. Blackie didn't escape into a world that would forgive him. He escaped into a world that would meet him with guns first and questions later. He went back to the road, back to stolen cars, swapped plates, quick meals, rented rooms under false names, back to the life of a man who can't sit with his own stillness. He was recaptured in Texas in 1934 after a string of robberies there. And this time, the punishment escalated again. He was sentenced to death on robbery charges. Death is different from life imprisonment. Life says, "We will hold you." Death says, "We will end you." It collapses all future into one final corridor. Blackie was held at Huntsville, the Walls Unit, where Texas kept its condemned men. And then, somehow, he did the impossible again. On July 22, 1934, Blackie escaped from Huntsville prison in a death house escape. If you let that sink in, you'll feel why his name spread like fire. Escaping from prison is rare enough. Escaping from death row is a story that doesn't stay local. It becomes legend instantly because it makes the state look fallible in the one place it insists it cannot be. Now imagine what it feels like to be Blackie after that. You're a man the state has already tried to kill on paper. You're a man who knows that if you're caught again, there will be no patience left. No one will take risks to arrest you cleanly. No one will trust you to surrender. Every traffic stop becomes a potential gunfight. Every knock on a motel door becomes a decision between opening it and firing through it. Every stranger's glance feels like a question. Asterisk. Do they recognize me? This is the part that outlaw stories often romanticize, so let's strip it down. This isn't freedom. This is a long panic. You don't sleep deeply. You don't stay anywhere long enough to feel safe. You live in the car's rumble, in the smell of gasoline on your clothes, in the constant need to make the next move before someone else makes theirs. The road becomes your home, and it is a hard, indifferent home. And when you live like that long enough, the road starts to narrow, not physically, but in options. You can only outrun so much. You can only steal so many cars. You can only trust so many people. You can only roll the dice so many times before a snake shows up. By December 1934, the chase has become a funnel. The law has learned. Communication has improved. Officers coordinate. The gaps that once existed between counties and jurisdictions have tightened. The same infrastructure that once helped him move now helps them converge. Which brings us back to Route 66. December 6th, 1934. A stolen car. Amarillo in the distance. Cold air making everything look sharper than it is. Somewhere behind him, the law is closing in. And Blackie does what he has always done. He keeps moving. He tries to make speed into safety again. He tries to turn the road into a shield. But on this day, the shield fails. A tire is shot. The car starts to wobble. The stolen machine, the thing he's relied on like an extension of his body, begins to betray him. When a car fails in a chase, it isn't just mechanical trouble. It's the world announcing that your luck has ended. The deputy closes in close enough to see him through glass. That's the moment that belongs to no one's ideology or romance, only to human fear. A man who knows he cannot be taken alive without violence. Another man who believes he cannot let him go without risking more deaths. The deputy fires through the windshield. It is not a duel. It is not a fair fight. It is a conclusion. Blackie Thompson dies there on the road in the stolen car, with the winter sky looking down like it's seen all of this before. Afterward, the story becomes paperwork again. Identification, weapons logged, reports filed, newspapers printed, the world exhaling now that the chase has ended, and Route 66 keeps doing what it has always done. It carries the next traveler. A family heading west with everything they own tied down in the back. A salesman with a sample case. A trucker hauling goods. People chasing new lives instead of running from old ones. They pass the place where Blackie died and never know it. Or they know it only as a rumor, a sentence in a newspaper, a story told by someone older, someone who remembers when the road wasn't famous and an outlaw used it like a bloodstream. That's what makes Blackie Thompson's story different from pure legend. It's complete. It's not just a cluster of rumors, it's a documented arc. Crimes in Oklahoma and Texas, a killing in Drumright, arrests and convictions, escapes from prison, twice, and death on Route 66 in 1934. And when you pull back from the drama and look at it plain, you see the real shape of it. Blackie didn't beat the system. He exploited the system while it was still learning how to close its seams. He lived in the lag between disbelief and action, between county lines and coordination, between routine and vigilance. And then the country adapted. The law got faster. The net got tighter. The road got mapped, patrolled, named. And on a cold day in December, the road finally stopped carrying him. You can run for a long time on a road like that, but you can't run forever.